From the Chestnut Street Bridge in Mayfield across the Lackawanna River, if you follow the bank along the west side, you can still find traces of the old original road that went between Scranton and Carbondale. I'm along the Lackawanna Avenue, the very northern part of Mayfield as it starts to enter Childs. Just a short ways in from the river, you can see part of the old trail that was the original road leading from German to Carbondale. Pretty well overgrown today, but still traces. Still tracks where animals use this route. Here are some of the early cobblestones showing where the old road once existed. These are some of the old cobblestones from the road. That's one of the old cobblestones.
It's something imprinted right in it.
It's a G.
Almost like... Should take this back with us.
Here's the most discernible section. This is the east side of the road. The west side, 12 feet away from the east side, is the west side of the road. At this point, it almost looks like the road had a branch heading westward. At this point, the road came very close to the river. We found these two paving blocks along the old road bed. If you cross the D&H tracks, almost directly across from the powder mill, you come to this, the remains of the light track of the gravity railroad. This is still the gravity track. We're now approaching Archville. Here's one of the old ties from the gravity railroad. Along that same downward slope, running parallel to the D&H tracks. On the other side, they probably had to cut away these rocks in order to build the right-of-way for the gravity. Another one of the ties. And some of the rocks right along the right-of-way. This is still the light track descending down into Archville. Every so far you come across another one of these ties.
Tell me about.
Oh, yeah, there's where they drilled for it.
One of these?
Yep.
Yeah.
Huh.
Amazing in those days. I mean, that's like another one.
Another one there.
Another one here and here.
Every so far.
Over
There's evidence where they drilled to blast.
It's amazing for that time period.
The track is pretty high above what is now the railroad. To give you an idea where we are, that's Wayne Dipple's house in the distance. This gives you an idea of the terrain. We're still finding the ties. Pretty complete row of ties in this area. You can see Wayne's house now. Good. I don't know whether this is from that era or later. There's a good stream of water underneath the roadbed. Across the river is where the old Pembroke breaker once stood. I don't know what era this dates from. Another series of drilled holes for blasting. It was somewhere in this area where the loaded track bridged across the Lackawanna River. This could be the roadbed for the loaded track. The heavy track went somewhere in this area, a much steeper hill than the light track. It's been a steady climb to this point. This will give you an idea of how far up the mountain we've come on the heavy load track. Some of the old cable.
Pull the cars up.
It had to be one from the gravity. It was really heavy cable. This is an area where they had to dig out all the trench between rocks in order to maintain the proper grade.
All they did is
Some cut. We're on the road going from Mayfield over to Edgerton. So that was where the old railroad went?
Yes, the railroad went alongside this mountainside, and it did come from over at the breaker, which we'll be entering into Edgerton. And they used to take the coal from the breaker along this line right through come down by the Erie Breaker here towards Mayfield or Carbondale area, and they would dump it in the railroad cars, D&H and Erie Railroad, and they'd take it out to market. That comes from the Edgerton Dam.
This is the Ellsworth Creek.
The Ellsworth Creek. And it is also coming from the Hosey Dam. And all that water comes from way up from the top of the mountains, yet there's no creeks up there. Some up in the area, but that's all from springs.
Oh,
And, snow runoff and water runoff.
so from here on was
Yeah, this is
Edgerton.
going east, right?
Yeah.
And this is the one that's exactly going right down to the dam.
Yeah. So from here on was Edgerton?
We are in Edgerton right now, at this moment. This is the old Edgerton Road that leads down to German and to the valley, throughout the valley. And of course, it's been cut off by the Edgerton rather than the Aylesworth Dam. So now we have that, and it's inundated with all the water, you see?
Yeah.
So that's cut off, but you can get around it, but this is the original road.
Okay.
And if you look here, just in this area here, right there was a dirt cellar where they used to keep all their milk and food stuff for the summer.
This is for the Shoes house.
Shoe house. And in the creek, as we just passed by, there also they used to cut ice and put it in, cover it with leaves and ferns, and keep the food cold throughout the summer months. Let me just say, the beginning of Aylesworth, where the old gravity ran just right down there, I'll show it to you in a minute, and it converged here, and coming from Carbondale Mayfield this way, and from Edgerton down this way. This is the hub.
Okay.
Exact spot for the Schust or Sophronia Schust store that they had here.
The one we have the pictures
The
of.
pictures of the stone, they called it the Chaperon's house or the stone house.
Yeah.
And the road I just showed you, they used kegs of beer. Mr. Hosey with his team of horses, he used to bring it here, and also from the railroad station down there, they would get a lot of supplies. They also had a little store here. So they would get all the stuff from the railroad station, and he'd bring up on his horse and wagon. I believe his name was Will Hosey. I know it was Hosey. They had a barn down there by the underpass at the D&H Railroad, if you're familiar with that.
Yeah.
It was on that area. They had a couple sets of horses. And right here, we turn to right here. Now, just some years ago, the forest department put all these evergreen trees or Christmas trees here, or whatever you want to call it. And this used to be their orchard. They had apple trees, pear trees, and they had there used to be a lot of mushrooms over here. And what they used to do is have the stoves, and they used to dry them out and save them. And if you look right here to the right a little, see that end over there? That is the part of that you were talking to me that runs on Archville, part of the railroad. What do you call it again?
The gravity.
Gravity, yeah. Yeah, and down here they had the horses. I mean the cows and everything. They used to have a pasture down here. And if we come over here, if you look east from here, the Chaperonia Schust house here. And there were 4 other properties that were privately owned. I have their names, I don't have them with me, but I will have that with a talk someday. Right up here, the 4 privately owned, including the Schust residence. Across to the left of me here, this was their planting grounds. They had a barn here, they had another barn up there where they kept their cows, and they had chickens, and they had pigs, and they grew some up a little higher on the end, up on that end. They grew some of their vegetables in the garden. Of course, here are the fruit trees next to the building on the right. Everything was here.
Yeah. Hard to believe there was an orchard in there.
Yeah.
Doesn't take long for things to grow over.
You know what? Just before this, I have a picture of the Chaperon house, and you look up here, but there were no trees. You can see. I showed you that in there where the house was.
Yeah.
That's how empty. You could see that mountain, but no, you can't. They're calling the trees. This field right here, all the way up to the company-owned grounds, where it kind of met with the schoolhouse, which I'll show you a little later. You know, but I didn't realize one time Mr. John Schuster told me, he says, they had a schoolhouse, and I said, I tried to find that. I could never find it. I thought it was probably more up in the Hosey area where the dam is, but then I discovered I had some person come as a photographer. He was a professional. He would take a picture of the community from where it was taken earlier, the pictures we have, and he showed me, and we put it together, and I dug the schoolhouse up there. It took me 15 years, and I'll show you when we get there.
Now, this is the main
we are in
road?
the private sector now of the homes that were here that were not company owned. We'll be making this turn. Here's really the beginning of the town of Edgerton, and as you turn to the right going up that mountainside, it takes you to called Whippoorwill,
Oh, okay.
another area, and that runs all the way down to Archibald, and you will bump into the gravity on there as you were just a few days ago. To the right, that was the height of the road.
Oh.
As you look at it now, since that June flood, you could see the destruction from that water. Okay, we're now on coming into the town of Edgerton again. This is the main road that's been used for many, many years, since probably 1886, and it still remains. I would say thousands of people have traveled this road from East German and the other side of town in Mayfield. They would come up to the dam and enjoy summer swimming here at the Hosey Dam.
How many miles is it from German to the Hosey?
Well, the Mile Rock that we call, that's on the on this road, Edgerton Road, that's 1 mile from going to town. It'd be from, let's see, from the railroad station to the milestone which we have down in the park, you know. And from that part up to here, it would be, well, to the dam up there, maybe 3/4 of a mile.
I see.
This is supposed to be, if I had a picture, in other words, we're just coming from German up the Edgerton Road here, and if you come up here about another 100 feet, I'm going to show you this here. That used to be the main office, and we'll go to that right now. Look here, this is the main office, where the main office where they would employ the miners, and they would also pay them, and always pay them in silver dollars and coin and gold at that time. And one time, up here on the right, I discovered inside of one of the stone walls a glass jar, and it had, I don't know whether it was paraffin or wax or lead on it, but of course it was deteriorated. So the glass jar was kind of against two rocks, and it stayed that way. And then I found 50 Indian head pennies.
Ooh.
And they dated from 1859 to 1901. I gave them to someone to look it out and never got it back.
Yeah.
I remember not to do it again.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that used to be road.
It's really washed out from the June flood.
See the flood, I mean, from the creek ran over
Yeah.
and kind of ruined everything here. Right here, if you notice in there is horses and mule, and that's where the mule barn was. And I picked up some mule shoes there and horseshoes. I have them at home. I'll have them on display one day. Show you that. Breaker.
Oh.
You see this breaker here?
Yeah.
And you see this trestle
Yeah.
that ran alongside here. There's part of the foundation to the left, to the right rather. Can you see it? That foundation and the breaker that we have here and the trestle that ran here, there was the cars that were unloaded, and they'd back all the way down here through this whole ravine through here, and when they're ready to take them into the breaker, they'd pull them up towards the breaker, and I'll show you that a little later.
Okay,
And
now this would be like railroad cars.
the railroad, they'd be on a trestle up high, and they
Okay.
used to meet up into the chutes where the breaker was to fill. And down lower here on the bottom was a set of tracks. If you notice right here, they would take all the, if you look at ashes, that was from the big furnace they had up here, and they would load them in the cars and dump them on that side, on the bottom. Now we're going to go up to the breaker from here, of the breaker. And the breaker, see that pillar up there? That's concrete pillar. It just looks like rocks, but it isn't.
Okay.
And you'll notice part of the concrete wall there, and a part of the... Now let me explain this to you. This breaker had 7 or 8 tiers that ascended into the mountain. If you take a picture here, Walt, on the bottom, here, that's a, see the stone wall?
Yeah.
That's the first tier. There's a second tier. There's a third tier, fourth, fifth, and it kept ascending up to the top, where we'll be going, if we have chance today, to go to the Edgerton mines and the Edgerton drifts. You know?
Yeah.
And up in that area is where they mined the coal, and up there was a big wheel and quite a few sheds for mules, horses, and they had a shanty there where they kept their tools, and there was a big wheel with a big cable that pulled the coal from the mines, and they'd come here and they'd dump it into this breaker, you know, and it process it for, you know, process the different sizes of coal that they needed. And the excess stuff such as pea coal or column they used for the railroad tracks, or railroad beds.
Now that's more wall in there.
That break. Okay, now we're going to go over here.
Well, a bull wheel?
They call that. And it had 4 or 5 or more than that of mules. And what happened here is, I'll explain that to you a little later. Right here is where they were connected to this big wheel, which had the different types of gears to run the machinery here when they had a breakdown. So what they did...
Then it was circular, like a merry-go-round.
Circular, right.
I see.
And what they did, there'd be 2 or 3 fellas on there tapping them on the behind to get the wheels running. You know, the gears started like large houses, the larger ones for speed and the small ones for power. So it was a smaller, bigger, and larger, you know. And they'd operate the breaker in that way when they had a problem.
It was down here.
It was right here where we're standing.
And the breaker
right to the right.
On up the hill.
And what they had, the pump house. It pumped the water from here, from that creek. See the steam over here on here?
Yeah, okay.
It pumped the water up into to wash the coal and put water into the furnace. Okay. And they pumped it from there.
I wouldn't have spotted those as being foundations, seeing them.
That would be probably right here. See, the creek runs through. It was right here. And about several years ago, I was up here digging in the area where the pump house is, and I found some of the old tools. I found a whole chest full of them, and I still have them. I'll have them on display someday for you. And if you look, you should run some of the water to the breaker. They were larger ones. These are smaller ones for steam, I guess.
Yeah.
They used to go around this way, come around that way, and I'll show you that. It's behind the school house, and make a big circle, and they come on the Edgerton Railroad, go alongside of that mountain, which we'll go on later, and it'll take you back where I explained to you earlier where it comes to the Erie Breaker.
In that area, and the mining
is to the left.
Up in there.
And we'll go up in there.
Yeah.
Back chute. Now, okay, the rails, when they come, they'd put this piece there to join it and put the for the tracking.
Oh, okay.
So they wouldn't, you know, fall apart. And then this used to go on top of it too.
I see.
Yeah.
A load of those pipes going to the breaker, isn't it?
Yeah, they had a lot because they use it for a lot of things, you know.
Yeah.
In fact, they used to have a little kind of wash all. It was gravity fed, and they'd kind of wash in it like a shanty, you know, and float. They'd wash in here too, you know. And
I've seen that kind of nail. It's smaller, but that size.
In that magazine I showed you, it was called The Truth magazine.
Yeah.
There's a picture of one of them.
That would be a railroad tie?
Yeah. That's one of the remaining. It's routed right through. They're hardly visible. I have an opening. I will take you in and show it to you.
The mines were kind of all up in that area.
It's what they call the Edgerton drifts, the mining. Remaining coal from up another in here too.
The railroad came down through here.
Yep. It came through that way, around the side, up over the mountain, to where I showed you. But it also came through this way too, and connected. As you see, some of the logs holding up. That's part of this mining area up here, which throughout time, that's probably 100 years ago, just loosened off and rolled right back in here. It's the mining area where they used to go into some of the entrances. But of course, see what has happened, like 100 and some years now, it's all changed.
Yeah.
1880, 1883, 1884, 85, yeah, 1883, they began work up here. So that would be how many years now? 183 plus 23.
Yeah.
123 years ago, right?
Or the pump.
I have it scattered all over the mountains. Yeah, all right, they drilled into this rock and they had cable. I don't know if it's visible on here, but it used to kind of hold the breaker from it shaking when they'd run the coal through.
Oh.
You know? This is where the cable used to hook onto this, embedded in the ground, this heavy rock. And as you look over here, straight ahead, when we were down the lower road, I showed the main pillar for the breaker. We're going to be right on that. We'll step on it. Where they had the tools to work for the breaker. It was part of the breaker. We're on the breaker site right now. Shaker chutes, or whatever you call that, or the grinders with the different sizes of coal. Of course, at that time, there were the bigger size. I don't think they bothered with pea coal or rice or column at that time. But later on, in the 60s, there was a Losh furnace that they used that column and it would burn. So they always use that up after. You know?
That's the cement we saw from down below.
Yep. Earlier from the main, this is the fifth one.
Huh.
And as you look up higher, that's the sixth, and there's a seventh, and then going on the main road will be the eighth. From the mule barn, they had to come up this road. We'll make a circle, and then we're going to come up on the top where the main tier is, and that's where we're going to be in the area.
Okay.
Where
Then this is a road used by mules. Oh, a pretty steep hill.
they could do it.
Yeah.
And you were responsible
So-
for a mule.
60 mules, huh?
Yeah, and if you were responsible for the mule, if anything happened to the mule, you'd have to pay for it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you had to take care of him. Street, there was 3 streets. A Street, B Street, and C Street. The whole town was right there. And if you look west, you can see the mountains of Germany on the side of Route 6. They always they had any things to do up here, they'd say, go to the area of the birch, you know?
Oh.
The 8th tier. That's the end of this breaker, the top of it. Right down from the way to bottom here to way up on top of here now. And this is the community, which we'll go to a little later. And there was a shed up there, and it was the big bull wheel that had the big cable that used to pull the cars from this area, take them down into the breakers to dump the coal, you know? What do they call that, a tipple? A tip?
Yeah.
Something like
Yeah.
that. You could probably see one here if you could see that. That's the one I just pull the cars from where we are in this area and take it and dump it into the breaker, you know? But around here, we used to have all different sheds, all different sheds. Had one of the places here, I can't exactly tell you, was somewhere in this area, there was a big storage for dynamite. We had it up here, you know?
Up here you can really tell how big that colliery was.
Sure.
Reaching clear down the valley up to here.
Right on. Yeah, it was really big. And look at the valley, how deep, the depth of it.
Yeah.
Really something. You can hear the creek water running through, and the noise that was up here, and the grinders making noise would just go right out through the community. Now what we're going to do from this area, we're going to walk over probably 200 feet, and we're going to, I have an entrance into a mine shaft that we're going to take a quick look at. Probably maybe 4 or 5 sheds for tool shed, dynamite, and they had a little place here. Sometimes they would take a little break, you know, and have lunch.
When you get looking around, a lot of these things you think are rock or foundations.
Yeah.
Definite coal, because you see it in the ground all over here.
There's a lot of it, and it's uncovered now. What they used to use, the place of the 7 ledges.
Oh.
And what happened here during that time, the folks in the community would come up from that end, from the left of me, and take a path. I'm not going to take it that way, but I'll show it. And there used to be so much berries up there, they used to pick all berries up there.
Oh.
They used to make wine out of it, and there's some pies and jam, and they used to take it down into the village. Main road is another road down there. Look at the depth of this, from that mountain down. Yeah. Way down from the top of that mountain, right down into the valley, is the town of Edgerton. There was, I think, some kind of a repair shop that they used to take care of the mine cars from up here.
Uh-huh.
Right down top. And I ran all the
Get
way
up in here, a lot of foundation you get looking around.
See, there's another formation up there. See it? Way on top.
Even right where we're standing was a foundation I didn't realize.
Yeah. See part of a wall there where they used to go into the mine.
Oh.
Right there. I'm going to take you into that briefly. Mine that ran into, you could see, if you look here, this is the wall. In the depth of this, about 25 feet, is where I have a chain from its time I left it in here.
That's
the problem.
down there is a road we came up.
Mm-hmm.
The old mule road.
Right. I've been through here. It's not that steep, but I don't want.
There's some good chunks of coal along this
Oh
route.
yeah, it's all washed out.
Yeah.
Really nice. Very nice color in it too.
Yeah, all along this route there's chunks of coal.
And the folks in town used to come and buy their supplies for the mine, and they would pick up the dynamite and shovels and fix everything they needed.
The old general store.
The old general store, and of course it was company owned the
Oh, yeah.
home, and they'd go down to the office, they'd work here all week or two, get paid, go down and give them money back.
Yeah.
Just survive them, right?
Yeah.
But that's where the store was. It's right here, and as you notice behind it is the office is just to the left of us.
Okay.
Found a lot of horseshoes
Oh,
and mule shoes. I have several of them, and I have them on display too.
the old mule barn here.
For maybe at least more than a quarter of a mile. They were real huge banks, but people have been coming up here.
Oh, okay, now actually from the breaker, that was to generate steam?
Steam, yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, see where it's mine silt before, now this is all ash.
Yeah. This is where they
Nothing but ash. You'd see the ash and you wouldn't realize they did it back to that era.
the beginning of town again with the office, and this used to be another way to get to Edgerton. As we make the bend over here, we're going to come on A Street.
Oh, this bridge, or bridge here in the early days,
There was
that could be the bridge that I had pictured Mr. Halstead standing on from 1818, or 1918.
not this one.
No, but in this spot.
Was he up here, you mean?
They really had an ideal spot for their town, didn't they? They had an ideal spot for their town.
Problem with any water,
Yeah.
because all of it was kind of pure at the time. We used to drink out of this creek.
Sure.
There's nothing. This is part of that Chaffron's house, that Chus residence.
Oh.
That's part of that field. And I'm going to take you to the left a little, pretty soon, and that used to bump into where the schoolhouse was.
So we're back on that main road coming from German over.
This is the one on now, called the main street of Edgerton. We just got from this area. Now we're here through this area. That is the main street of Edgerton. This is what they call A Street. There was A, B, and C. And the school was on C Street, and we'll get to that a little later. You see the strip?
Oh yeah.
That ran all the way to Mayfield, right through the forest land, came right up and through Mayfield to what they call Keystone.
That was the water supply
That
from
still is, yes.
Jose to Mayfield.
They're not getting any water from here, but that was the main supply, and I assume that had been probably put in probably in the late teens or early 20s, or the dam was built in 24. The thing on it, and if you look here, this is where breakers on that end. We're walking now directly on this end on A Street.
So that's probably what I used to see years ago, but there's more of it there. When I was up here before, I didn't recognize that as being the foundations.
See, and then they come up here with some kind of equipment. They kind of destroyed what was left. There's some of the bricks from the chimneys, and we'll go around. Yeah, this was A Street. Here we are now, and it backed into the B Street where the homes were there, and then C Street. We'll get on to that a little later. But this is just what is left of it. Stone piled up there. That's all from some of those bulldozers or something pushing the things around and just clumped it all up. And then the lines I showed you with the pipes, this was the pump house. That's where I dug in here and I found a whole chest full of old tools. And that's where it pumped the water from that creek up into the breaker. This is the original site. And if you come up here, you can get, we're not going to go, because if you look at this part of it here, here's where we are standing, that goes all the way up here. You're going to take it to the Hosey Dam. You can take a picture of the main street, what remains of A Street, the main street in the town of Edgerton. And to your left, it's all that is all, you can see still the foundation, part of this foundation covered with moss and everything, and dirt and trees and debris. And that is all of the buildings you see on the town. That is the main street in Germany. I mean, rather Edgerton. If it it'd be all right, you know? So now we're entering on B Street. And it made a turn this way. And it ran perpendicular, I guess, with the A Street, and it ran up to that mountainside up there, which is about 600 feet from here, that you'll come into the Hosey Dam. So this is B Street. I found this crowbar. This is what I wanted to show you. See? And that's really original crowbar if you look at it.
Yeah.
And there's another piece of material that's passed here too. And this was embedded. It's a shoe, hopefully of its time. It's all kind of rotted out. But it was kind of like in a metal box, but that was destroyed too. You can see the rust on it, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
So I probably would think, I'm not an archaeologist or anything, but it had to be embedded deep in here, you know?
Yeah.
Bust it out.
Yeah.
Maybe get in. This is the C Street going this way, from this way, see? Straight through. Now let's just turn back. I'm going to show part of it to you now.
The C Street now.
Yes, this is the last street.
Oh.
This area right here. That's the back where we're entering the front way of it. See, it's supposed to be reversed, you know? From this, it took me 15 years to find this, and I found it, finally dug it out. I had someone here, professional, and I dug this out, and this is the cellar of it. Of course, that spot down was the two outhouses. If you look here, they were behind it. And right opposite right here to the right hand side of you was a coal shed and a wood shed. And you see the windows here?
Yeah.
And down there was a step. You'd go up here and you go into the school, and this was the basement.
Uh-huh.
Okay? So right here is where they had school, and they'd have school even on Saturday morning. They would have 2 classes, one from 8 till noon, and from noon until 4 in the schoolhouse during the week. And Saturday, there'd be from 8 until noon. And on Sunday, this was used, some ministers of that time used this as a place of worship. And others that were of different faiths, they traveled alongside that mountainside. We're going to go on it. We're going back. And that's the Edgerton Railroad, and that's the one that takes you with the coal that came from the breaker around the mountain, came up around this way, and took you right into Mayfield, up to the breaker, Leary breaker, where they deposit the coal into cars. And then we're going to take a walk back that way. But anyway, that's where the outhouses were, and it's a nice level journey for us to go. House there, probably little frocks or something. You know, they had the color in them yet.
Oh. Oh, yeah.
See? And here's part of a cup.
Yeah.
It's all of its time, but here's part of the glass. If you just look at the color too, they had green and some other colors. And right next to it is where the Chaperone and Struce field used to bump into here. It divided the private from the coal mining.
And this was the old playground for the kids.
Yeah, can you imagine the bunch of kids that used to be here? Don't you remember now there were between 200 to 300 families here.
Yeah.
If you look at the size of the town,
Yeah.
I can't see it much on this picture.
So foundations all over the place.
Yeah, there's a lot of, and that's, can you get a picture of that? They had their vegetable garden, so forth and so on. And if you look up here, I can't see it as well as on this picture, but right there in the middle of C Street, right up here, there was an outdoor baking oven where they used to bake bread, you know? And you could smell the aroma of bread being baked through the whole village. And that was mostly done on Saturdays with the women to their backyards, you know?
Either their yards, their vegetable plots. All you see now is mine silt.
And that's it, that's the bottom of it. And right after, you can keep this on, right after they closed down the breaker, and they deposit all the silt as you see here. And there were real high comb banks. And that was taken out here about in the 30s by a name of Basil Nidock from Mayfield. He had a mining and construction. Did you ever hear of John Goosey?
Yeah.
Well, he was part of this.
Oh, okay.
That's where the breaker was down there about maybe what, 600 feet? So we still have to go maybe another 400 or 500 feet yet where the homes still continued on. And from there they stopped, and then we're going to get into the Hosey Dam area. The front of the company store was, remember we took the back end of it?
And this is the original.
The original A Street. Well, this little one here now was done by the water company because it was so growing in, and they used to come up check the dam, and then they discontinued coming here, you know.
This is
Jakey Waterman, right? Dam. Built in 1924, and if you look up to the left, here on the building. That's where the pump is up in there, and there's 2 pumps in here at the bottom. This is the lower dam, and the main dam is right up the hill, just right over that building.
now the old original dam was on the same site. They just rebuilt it.
No, it's right there. It's original. This is only a secondary dam from Collins.
Well, was there a dam here before 1924?
No.
Oh.
Just a stream that came through. Taken from this. The Edgerton and Hosey Dam. take a shot at this wall at a distance. All that rock was cut out down there where that we got the stone for the World War I.
Oh. Huh. Amazing what they could build years ago.
Wow, look at the size of them. Unbelievable. Really nice. Really nice. There's another shot. And this one you can see the whole, see the size of it? Here's the other end of it if you want. Well, Mayfield. Years,
Over in the Mayfield for water.
but it's not used anymore. This is facing east, and this is the Edgerton Railway that comes around on this side of the mountain and comes circular, comes right over in that area where the breaker was, I explained earlier. So now we are on the Edgerton Railroad. We're on runs right straight until you come to near the bowling alley. Down from that used to be the Erie breaker,
Yeah.
and that's exactly where Edgerton first started with the engineers who discovered the coal. They're probably maybe about a foot high, and it came up into this Edgerton about 20 feet high. So we're going to be heading right now to the area where the Erie breaker was. This is the Edgerton Railroad.
Following the old railroad route.
Right. That is where the schoolhouse is, and if you look up into the mountain, that's where the mine entrance was.
So this is a view of that old photograph.
Just reverse now.
Yeah.
West. We're looking west, and that was part of the field. That's why you notice it's so flat.
It
And
looks like a field from here.
Yeah, and up in that corner is where the schoolhouse is, and that's where it divided the company land again from the private. And of course, this is part of the
Yeah, when you look down at it, it makes more sense than
Yeah.
when you're right at eye
from
level
there,
with it.
because the creek deceives you a little, you know.
Oh, we're saying the railroad bed.
Right on it.
This gravity railroad?
No, this
No,
is
the
the
regular railroad.
this is the Edgerton Railroad.
Edgerton railroad. Yeah.
Yeah.
This picture of the remains of the Stephen Schust home was taken about 1930.
This is from the schoolhouse up there too.
Okay, those doorknobs, they came out of the school, do they?
Schoolhouse. This also.
Oh,
This here, I dug them out from here, from the bottom of the basement. This, of course, is from one of the breaker. This is a horseshoe. This is a mule shoe. All these tools you see right here is from the pump house.
now the smaller one is a mule shoe.
Right. This one here. And of course, this is the horse, and here's the different types of tools, which you don't find too much like that. Now we're using the pump
yeah.
house from the. I also have others with me, different types. Another old one, and there's a different type. They were used on the main line, and these are kind of were used around the breaker sites where they would have the little Lokies pull
Oh,
them
the
out.
railroad spikes.
Spikes. And here are the different types of bottles. Of course, there are only pieces and fragments, which shows you on here, and I tried to get a hold when I can. It says McDermott, German, PA,
yeah.
and you come here and you come and get full name German from William J. McDermott. Here's a bottle here from Carbondale from Nealon, Thomas Nealon, and that is the pharmacist in Carbondale. I thought it was maybe on Main Street, and I spoke to someone and said this bottle was from like 1880 or something, 1882. This is found in the schoolhouse, top, and that's from the breaker site, and I explained to you before how that worked.
Yeah.
On that
yeah.
bull wheel,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
and they had the
With the mules.
mules, and
Yeah.
they tap them, and when they couldn't get any water from the pump house to go into the breaker, they used to have it, and it started from the power wheel, and it,
Yeah, I had the kids playing with from the schoolhouse.
yeah.
What would it be though? What's it go to?
See, that used to go over, I think they had a little,
Oh,
later on, that's some kind of a thing hanging, you know, right into the ceiling.
Oh my god.
And that's from Carbondale, and Bruce checked this out, it's about 1880 or 1875. And that's the time of it, and there was a...
It's all in one piece. That's amazing.
Yeah, I couldn't find it. Here's what I found, bottlers. All pieces like the William J. McDermott, the German part, some part...
Oh my goodness.
What is this? And there's some from Robertson's Brewery. Ever hear of that one in Carbondale? And they
I've
have one
heard
in
it.
Scranton. That's up on Church Street. Part of the building's still up there where the street here, A, B, and C. The main street was right through here. If you can't see, Walt was on it. I have to take a whole bunch of you up there someday.
Oh, I know. I want to see it.
It'd be nice, right?
G-E-R.
E-D-G-E, Edgerton.
Wow. Edgerton.
Here's a census of them too. Everyone that was there.
Took that out?
Yeah.
Holy mackerel.
It's a
That is amazing.
I
shoe
had
from a
to.
mule.
It was bothering